Three, two, one.
Hello, this is Roberta Denny. I'm Roberta Denny, and I'm going to show you the process for painting chintz on porcelain. I'm holding up an example here of one of the pieces that I've painted. And I'll have several other pieces I'd like to share with you because I'd like to give you some inspiration of not only how do you paint the chintz, but how do you make it your own and some different options that you can use. So to start with, let me give a little introduction of what it is. Some folks are not familiar with what chintz really looks like, what it is. And so I've got some examples here to kind of take you through what is it. And showing you this, I want to point out that in general for chintz, it's a very dense pattern. It's totally covered, very colorful, multi-colors in it. Patterns usually are associated with flowers, but you can add birds or butterflies or other little accents to it from that perspective. But then also you can kind of see that there's a repeating pattern, meaning there's a group of flowers, and these flowers are organized in different groupings, but it stays within that pattern group, so it repeats the pattern. So let me go to my camera here where I can show you a little bit more of what I'm talking about. I have a book on chintz that I highly recommend if you're interested in doing a lot of chintz. This is a very good book. It's got a lot of examples. It's the only book I'm aware of out there that covers chintz, and it's by Joanne P. Welsh, and I think you probably have to get it on eBay or something like that. It is out of print. But to kind of really show you how fun it can be, this is an example of a lot of people will display their chintz in just as how do I describe it, as many as you can get together of all these different patterns, and it gives you this, you might say it's busy, but it's so colorful and pretty. I'm a collector of chintz, and I've displayed mine in this way as well. I was not a collector of chintz before I started painting it, though. What happened was I was in an antique store. I saw a piece and I thought, oh, this is beautiful. What is it? And after I got into it a little more, I realized that, hey, we can paint this. I kind of figure out how to paint it. And that's what I did. So here's an example of one. What's characteristic of the chintz also is that it's totally painted, meaning the handles are painted. You can see down the center, it's actually painted down the throat of this little, it's actually a lamp vase. So it's probably on the top of it. But that's an example. You can see the flower pattern, very different. We've got, I wanted to show a close-up of one of the patterns. And that's what I'll be showing you, some variety of different patterns. This one happens to have the roses and forget-me-nots. But every one I show you, like over here, different flowers, all in their own, very pretty, I think. And again, the handle, notice how the handle totally covered. And then we've got not just plates, cups, saucers. Here's a little jam pot. And again, a different pattern of roses. But note how it's got a color in the background, but it also has all of these little, I call them, well, they're background leaves. I call them a little bit of a frill that really fills it in so that you don't have spaces. The whole thing is covered with paint, one way or another. And then I wanted to show you this one. This is one of my favorites. As I mentioned, you put butterflies or other little, birds or whatever. This I think is so sweet. It's got little butterflies in it. They name all of these. This one's called Floral and Butterfly. It's kind of straightforward. But this was an inspiration for one that I painted, and I want to show you some more examples of different pieces or things that we can paint on our pieces. So this is a watering can, little watering can, and you can see I used the pattern of the little butterfly. So that was my inspiration, but I took it and just took that idea, that concept, and said, how can I then apply it with my colors and on my piece? And so I did this one. You can see I did the painting on the inside of the handle, the outside, all around the spout on it, handle up here. And it just makes it so colorful, and I call it sweet. I think they're sweet looking. So there's an example of a watering can. Now, so far what I've shown you is totally covered. But you can also use it more as an accent to a piece. So now this one, this is a bowl, wide rim bowl. And on this one, I took the chintz and put it along the outside as an accent to the piece. And this one, as you can see, is a little bit more of a modern piece. So you can apply what I'm going to show you how to do the chintz. You can apply that to something more, I'll say traditional, like I was showing you in the watering can, or something more like this, which is a little bit more modern. And another one I'd like to show you before I actually start showing you the process. Now this one's an urn, and this is a little different. I like it's a little bit more simplistic, not as busy if you don't want it to be quite as busy. And the reason it doesn't look as busy is I did not put the little filtered leaves in the background. So you see a little bit more space between the groupings of flowers, but it still fills it up. This is one of my favorites. I really like how the violets stand out with the little yellow background. But it was all painted freehand. I recommend the freehand because it gives it a more natural look, and it really works easier. It's actually easier to do, and I'll show you why. But that's the violet one. So as you can see, you can do many different flowers. A lot of times I think about, well, what flower do I want to start with? What flower am I interested in doing? Do I want it to be violets, double violets maybe, or a fantasy flower? It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Okay, I'm going to show you the process for how to paint this piece. And I can give you a few steps related to doing it. Let me start with giving you the highlights of what's important. How do you you look at this and you say, oh my gosh, look, it's so busy and there's so much in it. Where do I even start? Well, if you break it down into manageable steps, it really simplifies it considerably. And I'm going to show you how to look at it in more simple steps. So where I start is painting the main groups. Well, what are those main groups? I got a plastic sheet of paper here so I can identify those for you. So the main groups are the flowers, the big flowers, not all the little forget-me-nots. And if we go through here and just pull out those flowers, I'm just kind of real roughly giving you an idea of where those are. There's one over here. I'm including their leaves. There's one over here. The reason I'm showing you this is because you want to start with painting your main cluster. And that's the main leaf, a flower and leaves. And when you do this, you want to make them relatively the same size. But you want to get some variety in it. So you want to make them different shapes. And this one actually has a little outcropping from it. So what you see here is from the main groups. This is what you paint on the first fire, these main groups. They're relatively the same size. They're somewhat evenly spaced. And this is all very general because it's nothing, you don't want it to be exacting. But you can see the spacing through here. You want to make sure you leave some space because I call it grow my garden. I'm going to be adding all these little forget-me-nots and all this other detail. I'm going to grow it from what you're seeing here now. You also want to have some go off the edge. So I've got a few here, a couple there. And also keys, they're different shapes. You don't want to have just all round little circles because that pattern will show. When you hold it out and hold it away from you from a distance, you'll see too much of a polka dot pattern. You don't want that. You want to be able to look at it and you just get an overall effect and feeling for it. So you want to make them, you want to give it some variety. And that's what I've got here, lots of different shapes associated with them. The kind of to help you know how much space to leave, I also look at and say there's relatively 50% of white space. In other words, another way to say it, the amount that you paint to begin with here is really 50% of the plate, roughly, and 50% is unpainted on this first fire. And then lastly, there's no directional lighting. So if you look at this piece, all of your shading is done because there's another flower or petal or some object on top of what you're painting, so it gets the shape, the cast shadow on it. There's no directional lighting because, again, this you want to be able to look at it from any angle and get that overall effect from it. So all of that I just talked about gets you to your first fire, which would be something that would look like this. Okay, so again, I've got my main groupings. Some of them go off the side, but they're all basically the same flowers, same type of flower in there, and they're all randomly spaced. Okay, so now what do? Now we need to grow the garden. So we're going to start adding all the little forget-me-nots, and I will actually paint some of those to show you how what my thinking is and how to lay them out. So let me get my palette open here. And these are relatively easy. We're talking about little forget-me-nots, so they're pretty straightforward. You could do other little flowers. You could put, you know, they could just be little leaves type things. You could put little butterflies in it. On this one, I've got this little, I don't know, it's a little daisy type flower. But you want to go with something smaller than what this flower is, because this is the main flower. These are supporting flowers. Okay. Now I'm going to do them in 3 colors. If you look at what I did on the finished piece, we have blue, pink, and yellow ones. And that helps to make it very colorful. Okay, so I will start with the blue ones because you can probably see those a little bit easier. And I can start anywhere. I'll go with this one since it's one of the main ones. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little more. And I'm going to look at filling in areas that might be a light color that need to be held by having some color behind it, like this yellow flower here could use some color to hold it so you can see it. And I'm going to tuck it in to where it's just a little partial forget-me-not. And again, I want it to be not too big. Let me make it a little bit smaller for starting so that my other ones follow in suit with that size. So let's put another one out here. I'm going to also have it tucked in behind this yellow one. And I do worry about, like I say, pulling out highlights if it's on top of another one. So for instance, there I will actually pull that petal out so it's lighter. And I'll get my depth colors, like I'll get this one darker under there on the next fire. We can always come back and continue to paint on these. So let me get another one. We'll put this one out here more by itself. Let's put it under that other one and put it under that petal. I like to kind of lay it in. If I need to adjust the petal, you can do that. Okay, so there's that one. Not worried about doing leaves yet. I will in a minute. I like to get the actual petal in, the actual flower in here first. Okay. They don't have to all be attached either. So how about if I put one that's out here, and maybe it's again a partial one. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to give it variety. So let's say we're only seeing part of it there. So we've got this petal right here in front of it's kind of folded up and you're not seeing all of it. These do have 5 petals, so there's another one tucked in under there. And we can get a little bit of detail in them. Well, I've got the blue on my brush. I like to go ahead and get all the petals in, all the little flowers, and then come back and put stems and stuff on it. But see how I'm starting to fill in the blank space? I'm kind of making my way over here. I don't want to go all the way over there because I'm going to paint on this one also, and it's going to come towards this group. And you can also do, let's say I'm going to put one over here that's, again, helps this flower to show with having some color on it, but it's not touching those others, and that's fine. Doesn't have to. Might have a little bit of the center showing. Don't lose your original shape of your main flower. Okay, so that might be where I want to take it for this first group relative to the blue flowers. Let's add some of the leaves now. I'm going to use a chromium green. I'm going to use a different green than I used for these leaves from the bigger grouping. And so let's just, I do this pretty much with 2 strokes, make it somewhat simple. And they don't have to be, let's say, atomic. Don't have to be perfectly painted like a real one. You can make them fantasy flowers even if you wish, because you really want the overall effect of it. I'm going to put one right in between them too, right in here. And I do like to put little stems on these. Okay, let's put one. See, as you can see, I do not have it pre-planned. I'm just layering them. It's going to grow. I call it like growing in my garden. It's going to go in different areas, different directions. That's okay. But as you do it, you look at it and start asking yourself, well, where do I need to get some more put in there? Where do I need to fill in a little bit? This one might have one down here. Get them to overlap. And maybe there's one that just fills in this little spot right there. Okay, so let's get a few stems in here. So I have this one on a stem. And down there. And that's really the only stem I have going on there. Okay, but you can already see that's starting to fill in. So now over here, this would be a good place to put a yellow one because I have pink and white flowers in my main group. So I'd put a yellow one there. And this would be a great place to put a pink. And I'm kind of keeping it in a triad. I'm spreading them, but I'm picking colors based on what it's next to. I'm going to paint, show you over here, a pink one because the yellow, I normally would go there next, but I don't think it'll show up, as well with a demo here as the pink will. So, well, or maybe I have time, I can even put them both in. But let's say put another pink one in over here. We'll make it maybe a smaller group. A little bit big, don't go quite that big. Yeah. I like to usually say, like, if that's going to be my center, then I'm going to have a petal out here. A lot of times I just visualize it. Or you could just put a little dot in there for you to help identify where that center is going to be. Okay, so let's pull that out. And let's see if we can have one that's over here. So I'm looking for all those areas that can fill in, make it continuous. I'll use my leaf there. And let's get another one in here. So this pink I'm using is the same pink as what is on the big group here. And I'm going to try and get over towards this one. I'm starting to fill in this little area. It's a lot smaller than what has to go across here. But let's get another one right here. And I'm leaving a little space because I'll be pulling some little forget-me-nots in this group, and that'll bring them together. Okay. Okay. So we need our leaves. Right here. And I'll tell you one little trick once you get this going and you start filling it in quite a bit. I have to laugh at myself sometimes, but it gets so full, I lose my space, my place of where I am. And so sometimes I'll put a little tick mark, like with a marker, a Sharpie out here. So I don't have to go searching for what group was I working on, because I'm continually turning it like this. And you can easily lose your place. So if you get to that point, just give yourself a little help. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. I think you've got the idea. You can also, another little way of giving it some variety, you can put a little leaf out here. Give it a little stem coming in. Or maybe you put like a little, just a little stem or a little grass type thing. Or you just give a little, maybe a couple of them. Oops, try to make it shorter. You can do that out here. One here. A little bit longer. Okay, so I would then also put like a yellow one over here. But before I keep going that, I think you've got that idea. I wanted to just convey that idea. And also on this fire, though, we can do the filtered leaves. The filtered leaves are these that are under the color, under this background color. That's all of these little leaves, and they're filtered because they are in the background. You don't want them to be as prominent as all these other colors that are in the piece, but they help to fill in that white space. So what I will do on this one is actually paint them in like a gray color. Don't have to be a gray. You could do it in a green color. You can even do it in a pink or some other color that's in the plate. But the point is you want to make them a light color. So I will go with the gray, and they're just leaves. Now you have to envision that the rest of this gets painted in to where you don't have a lot of space left. But I would have, let's say out here, we could do a leaf. Let me get more paint on a brush. Here we go. Leaf out here. Maybe there's another leaf to it. And we need a stem for that. And then here's your stem. Down. And maybe we need another one on that stem. There we go. I do this at the end. I do all of the little forget-me-nots. Obviously the main groups are all done. Then this is the last thing that I do, because this is used to fill in spaces that are still open, that still have the white china. You can have some of these little things coming out from it. Make them go in different directions. Right now I've got 2 of them going in the same direction. So if I'm going to put another one in here, they don't have to all be on stems. You know, maybe it's one that's only like that. That might be all you need in some places. But we want it to go in a different direction. So let's just go off this way. Okay, so those are the steps. Again, it's doing the little forget-me-nots, filling in that background flower. They're smaller than the main grouping. And then it's adding the filtered leaves. And what that gives you is this. So you would fire that and you would get to this state right here. Let me back up so you can see it. Okay. So this one now has my main group in there. You can see all the little forget-me-nots. And then there's still white space, and that gets filled in with the filtered leaves. So this is ready now to do the background. And the background, I think, is the most fun part. There's so many things you can do with the background, and that's what I want to share with you to kind of give you some inspiration and different ideas of what you might like to try. For instance, you could just leave it white. I would probably do some gold or something on this border. But as far as the inside, you can leave it white. There's not too many that in the chintz style, if you want to keep true to chintz, that do it that way, but you can, and there are some. And I've got a picture here of one where they did it leaving the outside white. Let's see. Oops. Oh, here, that's right. I was thinking of another one where the border was white, but this one has a white background. So you can see that it's a white background. And the fact that they have it so filled in, it works because you're not seeing too much white. It's not, it is just the background. It's not a main part of the plate itself. This is just totally filled with flowers. And the leaves are used to fill it in between the flower groups, but they're painted in. They're not a filtered leaf, and that's what makes the difference there. Of course, you can do the color, like this was a pink one that I showed you. Let me show you one that I did with a black background. Now this one, because it's a black background, you can't do filtered leaves. So this is a little bit different, but it's still chintz. I built it the same way. I've got the main flowers. I tried something different. I did not want to do the little forget-me-nots. I just wanted to be, again, it was just different. I just wanted it to be not as frilly, but a little bit more bold. And I did that black background. Obviously, you want to definitely do the bottom of the cake plate. So here's an example of just black. You could do it in another solid color if you wished, if you chose to do it that way. But let me show you what you can do, because there are so many pretty colors in here, the pinks, yellow, blues. Your background can have a lot of different choices. It can go a lot of different ways. Yellow is a nice one to do because it pretty much goes along with all the colors you've got. It goes well with the colors in the piece that you're painted here. Now I'm doing this just to show you the colors, and I will do this on my own piece. I will paint it just very rough. This is not anything that I would fire. This is just for the purpose of deciding on color. When you actually go, if you made your choice, you actually go in and you're going to paint it, you need to resist your your anything that's painted, that's color. You need to resist that, not the filtered leaves, but everything else gets resisted. The reason for that is it's very hard, number one, to paint around all of these little areas, all these little flowers, the ins and outs. And if you were to do that, because you really don't like resisting, because some people don't, then you have to come back and clean all of the colored flowers, and that is very time consuming, hard to do. Plus, if you do the resist, you can do nice strokes. That gets it very even, very nicely done. My recommendation, only way I ever do it, is to resist it. But of course, you can't do that until you've done this and decided what color you want to make it. And right now, I'm just looking at solid colors. So you get an idea that that's pretty much what yellow would look like. You know, be something on that order. Very pretty, looks nice with it, I think. It goes well. Let's say we wanted to do green. I'm going to use like a moss green. We'd use a chartreuse, moss, grass. This kind of goes in with the theme of having leaves in the background. And when I teach this in classes, you know, two people might choose the same green and it looks good on one but not the other. You might say, well, why is that? They painted it the same. Well, all of our colors, as you know, are a little bit different. So maybe their blues were different. Maybe the yellows were, you know, more, one was more gold than the other, and the other using the same background doesn't look the same. So it becomes individual to your piece as far as what looks good. Let me get this green on. Again, I'm doing this just so you can get an idea of what works. Okay, do about a third of it. Yeah, okay. So now to kind of compare this, and I'm using a light color because it is the background. So here would be pretty much what the green looks like. Yeah, I like that. There's the yellow. I like that too. Let's say you want something that's more of a blue. I could go with the blue of the forget-me-nots, but I think I'm going to do more of a robin egg blue. So it's a little softer blue. I think it still goes with the other blues in the piece. Normally I wouldn't go away, you know, too far away from what's in there, but the greenish tones of it, of this robin egg, kind of blends still. Looks good, I think. It really, every time you put a color on, it gives it such a different look. And I never know in advance what I'm going to do. Because again, like I said before, it kind of depends upon the colors that end up in my flower groupings. And it's very hard to predict what I'm going to like. And you could even, if you wanted to do a matching set, you could basically do the same flower grouping, but for your set, do different background colors. They would still belong to each other because the flower groupings, but with giving the background colors being different would be very interesting, I think. Be very nice. So there's that color. I'm going to back off a little more so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so there we go. We've got kind of a blue tone, bluish green. That was robin egg blue. There's a chartreuse or moss green. And there's a yellow. So hopefully that helps to demonstrate that there's options. And of course, I got my original pink as well. So it comes down to a matter of taste of what you like. It's your piece, and you know, what do you want to make it? So those are some of the colors. Now, there's some other ones that, let's say you want to go ahead and put your color in, then you can come back and actually wipe out a pattern. So let me show you an example of that one. Page 119. Let me see, where's 119? Oh, it's up here. Okay, see how they did this one? And we can do this. This is what's fun about this book. You just get ideas. I'll zoom way in so you can see that. There you go. So this one has a yellow, very dark yellow, in fact, and there's no filtered leaves. You don't need filtered leaves on this one because you just paint these groups, then you put your yellow on and wipe out all of these little background flowers. There's another example of a green one, which I think is very nice too. I like this guy. Look at that one. So the background is a little bit darker than what I had painted in the demo, mainly because you need to now be able to see the white wipe out in it. I zoom way in. That's as far as I can go. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Again, a different effect. It's very pretty. They're all just a choice that you like. See, when you zoom back out from it, it looks green. It looks green until you go in and look at the detail of it. And by the way, notice this pattern. These are lilacs. It's called Lilac Time. And I did a little lilac piece of my own. This is just a little vase. Again, you can do them on multiple sizes. I want to show a few other backgrounds, a couple more. And I'll use this piece because it's small and you'll be able to see the effect more than it takes a little bit longer to do on the bigger piece. But again, you'd think, oh, how am I ever going to do chintz on something so small? Well, there's little lilacs and it works. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to paint dots. You don't know, it sounds like it might be busy, but what the dots do, like any of these backgrounds, it gives you an overall color. From a distance, you just see a color. And that's what you're looking for. And you can get that color by painting it in solid, by doing dots, by doing a wipeout. There's various ways to get that color. Here's an example of their dots. I'm going to zoom in for you. Okay, so you see the dots don't come across quite as well. They went heavy on dots around the flowers. I want to keep my dots all very even. But the key is you want to go around the flowers. You don't want to leave spaces where you're close into the flower. And I'll show you how I do that. But dots, here's one that I've done with dots. This is a Ming jar. Now these dots are very spread out. It's a big jar, so they're more spaced. But you can see I painted my background color. I painted my filtered leaves. Let me zoom in for you. And then after all that, I put the dots on. And when you look at it from a distance, what you see is the color. But yet it has this, I don't know, it's a very nice finish, something a little different. Of course, we did it on the lid. I left it, this part and this part without the chintz on it, though. Did that a little bit different. Okay, so how do we do our dots? I'm going to use pen to do the dots. Most of you, or a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with dots. I am going to use a green. I'm going to use a chromium green. I don't want something too light to where it doesn't show up, especially with dots, because the dots, I just recommend if they're dots, you want a little bit darker color so that you can see them. I'm going to show you one last one after this that would not take a darker green like this. You'd want to go with a lighter color. So I'm just taking my dry powder. Definitely want to do dry powder. This is a pen oil. Don't take your paint off your palette and add pen oil to it. It'll bleed. You need to add the pen oil to just the powder. It'll bleed whenever you go to paint it on your piece. And I want to get this to a consistency of pen oil so that it'll run off the pen. So let me finish mixing this up a little bit more. Okay, so that's definitely right consistency. Okay, so when you fill your pen, you want to just scoop it. Do not fill the little hole. You can see the hole in the pen. I don't know if it'll come across very well. Oh, there you go. You can see that hole? That's what you do not fill, otherwise it won't flow. Okay, so here's, let me set this over out of the way a bit. Okay, so now how am I going to do the dots here? Let's see. More. Okay, so I'm going to start with just in a small area. And what's key to doing this is to make sure that you go in these little in and out areas of your design. So I am going to go make sure I get a dot in there, for instance. Get a dot going around here and get one in there. In between. Sometimes I'll go right over here, get that dot, and then have it close in. That helps me to make sure that I keep a random pattern going on, that I don't repeat, you know, get a line of dots, let's say. And it just helps with the spacing as well. I'm putting down the dot. I'm holding it just a little bit until I get it to the size that I want. If I go real fast, they'll be small dots. You go slower, they're a little bit bigger. I think this is a good size for what I'm doing. And now I'm coming up to one of these filtered leaves. Go right over that filtered leaf, just like you did the background, because remember your dots are a background. So I just ignore those filtered leaves, go right over them, get in here and get some of this, go right in there real close. That helps to define the little flower there. It would look funny if you had spaces wide open around all of the painted flowers. That wouldn't be right. Another thing to make it easy on yourself, I recommend you do all your dots in one sitting. If you come back the next day and say, oh, I'm going to finish this, you might not be as loose, let's say. You might have to be more tight that day or looser than the day before. You'll see it in your dots. It'll be harder to get them even. Now there is a main flower leaf, so I don't want to fill that one in. It's just you get a rhythm going, and you just don't want to lose that rhythm. Get one way in there, get one way down in there. I'm going to fill in this area here, and then you can see the effect of what I'm getting. So here's a filtered flower, so let me go right over that, or leaf I should say. Get it down in here. I like this piece for it because it has all these little ins and outs that are great for getting these dots in there. Now let me fill in the rest right here. While I'm doing this, the history of chintz, it actually came, the first ones to make it were in Stoke-on-Trent in England. And back in the 1800s, they had a transfer process they used for the pattern, which was very similar to like making a copper pattern, picture of it, and then rubbing it and making onto paper. And then that paper was what was transferred onto the piece for painting, and they hand painted it then. Then from 1920 to the 1960s, they had a lithographic process, which really is very, very similar to a decal process. They were able to get all the colors on. They didn't have to do as much hand painting. But that ended in 1963, mainly because it was too labor intensive. Couldn't afford it. Things were manufactured cheaper, less costly, and they couldn't keep costs down with all the handwork in it. So they quit doing it. And if you go to the antique stores, you can still only find those that were originally painted or made by those processes. But then in the 90s, the main company that started it all started reproducing their patterns. And you can find reproductions by that company today that they did a few of their patterns. They had more than 50 different designs that they did. So there's the dots, which I really like. I hope you can see that well in the camera. Up close, it looks like, okay, dots. But when you get away from it, I think it gives it a very nice background. Very pretty. I like the dots a lot, especially on a smaller piece like this. I have seen this done. I don't have an example here. I gave it away. But if you do this in gold, a liquid bright gold, it's not too, it doesn't stand out too much at all. Still becomes, part of the background. It is exquisite. It is beautiful with the gold. Okay, so let me show you one more. I call it crackle. And it is a little bit different than what you normally consider for a background. But here's an example of it. So this is, there we go. So it's uneven. It's almost like a netting. It's uneven, 4 or 5 side little connections, network in there. I call it crackle. But again, the point of it is you do not see it per se. When you see the whole thing, it's just a green background. If you look close, you can see, oh, that's what's making that green background. Interesting. Now, in this particular one, they do not have filtered leaves. They have light leaves that might look like them, but they did not do the crackle on them. I would do the crackle right over them, is the way I did it. So again, I can use this piece to show you. There's the little dots. I don't want to go quite as dark of that green, so let me mix a little bit of a lighter green so that you can see that again. It just doesn't look good because this crackle is very much more busy, and I don't want it to overpower the actual flowers. So this will just take a minute to make up a new little batch here. Okay. And you could do little circles. There's one in here I could show you that has a black background with circles, which are kind of similar to the crackles, as I call them, very close to it. In fact, I'll show you that before I start painting this one. Give you another idea. I think that's probably good. It shows up very nicely on the black. And I also want to show this because it looks like it's a gold. Again, that really, this now becomes a little bit more obvious of a background. It becomes a little bit more of the design rather than just being a background. But that's in gold. That's gold on black. Very interesting to me too. I love them all. Okay, so let's do this one to give you that idea. Okay, so we're going to use the lighter green. But I'm going to use the same principles. That's going to apply no matter what kind of background you do when you get into these little specialty type things. I'm going to go around the painting area, but go right over those filtered leaves. I'm going to ignore them. And there's some that's in here. And I'm not paying attention to making these all, some particular pattern. It's just, they've got 4 or 5 edges. They're all touching. Let me zoom way in so you can see it. Here we go. They don't look like anything yet. Gotta give it a chance to develop by getting more of these in here. Get right up to the flower here. So this is a filtered leaf right here, so I can go right over that one. See how these are different shapes, but they're all kind of the same. If I look size-wise, if I look at these versus those, every so often you want to just stop and do a little check, look at what you're doing, make sure you haven't gotten too big or too small. And again, that's the reason for doing it in one setting. So this is a filtered leaf right here. So I'm going to go right over it. There's an area in here that you'd want to capture because you want to go around all those little flowers. So it's a little bit harder around these guys, but you can still get in there. A little bit right here. Okay, so I think this is probably enough to give you an idea of what this looks like. Okay, so there we go. And of course you would do the whole thing, but that's the close-up. But then when you pull back and look at it more from a distance, what it does is it just gives you that green background, what it looks like. And that yellow showing through is very pretty. You could leave it white if you wanted. That green crackle will show it more. So I think a little bit of a color in the background is nice. But you can see why you'd want it to be lighter. If you go too dark, then you're just seeing all those crackle lines, and you don't want to do that. You want to make an effect that it gives you a color for the background. That's the purpose of it. There's that, and there was our little dots. Very different, both different, cute, whatever your preference is what it comes down to. Or just plain, there's plain. So that I think is the most fun with the chintz. The chintz itself, I think it's very beautiful, but it is so fun, I think, when you get to the background because of all the options that are out there for you to choose from. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to give you an idea of what the process was. Give you some ideas of, first of all, the different kinds of chintz that you can do. What's the process of how do you break it down into something that's manageable, that gives you the end product that you're looking for? And the backgrounds, all of the fun different backgrounds we can do. And so with that, I just wanted to share with you, probably one of my most favorite ones that I've done. Cake plate. I have this one on display because it's one of my favorites, as I said. Let me get back to the screen here. I'll hold it up first. It's my cake plate. And again, I did the bottom on it. And it's the one with the little butterflies in it. And I left it plain with the yellow. So just wanted to share with you for the end of the demo here, what my favorite one is that I have done. I've had a lot of fun doing different ones. And I'm looking forward to even doing more of them. And I encourage you to go ahead and try them as well and enjoy creating the chintz of your choice. So that concludes the demo that I have prepared, and I thank you very much.
If you would like to unmute yourself and ask Roberta a question, now is the time for that.
What was the name of the book, the author of the book that you showed us at the beginning?
Okay, so this is the book, and it's by Joanne P. Welsh, W-E-L-S-H.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good source. Very good.
I found it interesting how you added the background with the dots and the crackle lines. I thought that was pretty cool. When you said you could use liquid bright gold, do you apply that with a pen or a brush?
Yes, apply it with a pen.
Okay. Would you use the same pen that you would use with the paint like you did, or do you have a special pen for gold?
No, I do use the same pen, but you asked a good question because you don't want to have any remaining paint on that tip. So I take the tip off and I clean the tip in denatured alcohol. So that way I'm ensuring that I have no paint whatsoever in there. And then I go use it for my gold. When I'm done with the gold, again, I do the same cleaning. So I can use it for either medium.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Roberta, thank you once again for sharing with us. This was a beautiful lesson and we all enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you asking me to do it. I enjoy sharing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And Suzanne, a while ago, you were asking me some questions. So after everybody closes out, leaves, if you want to, I can tell you, I can answer your questions now that I have a voice.
Well, I see you're on the recording, so we'll go ahead and end the Zoom lesson for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.